Hey people, it's Ed Midsole Bud here, back with perhaps the last running shoe review of 2023, unless something unexpected pops up. Today I've got in the Ride 17 from Saucony. So there's been 17 of these, but I haven't tried a single one out so far, so I shall step into this Power Run Plus midsole with an open mind. Let's check it out. Saucony have fired this one over to me for review, but they're not paying me to make this video, nor will they vet my views before my valued viewers get to see them. The Ride 17 is coming in at about 333 grams or 11.7 ounces in my UK 11, US 12. Just remember people that weight goes up and the stacks increase as the shoes get bigger in size. Just want to make that very clear. A few people have suggested that my midsole stack measurements are incorrect. They're not incorrect at all. The stack measurements that you see online will typically be for the sample size. US 9 is it? Something like that. This one's about 13 grams heavier than the Triumph 21 from Saucony. It's like 0.4 of an ounce, so if that bothers you, well, I think it's down to the additional midsole rubber we've got here. I got approximately 38 millimeters of stack in the heel, and there's round about 31 in the forefoot. In the insole here, they reckon it's an 8mm drop, so about 7mm. I think my measurements are pretty much on point. So that's about 6mm less heel stack than the Triumph 21. Interesting to note that Power Run Plus insole that we've got here within the Ride 17 makes up for about 8mm of that stack. It is a very thick insole. We've seen Saucony doing that quite often over the course of 2023. Some of that foam does wrap around the foot here. It's a little bit like one of those cup sole Nike shoes, maybe a little bit like a Jordan 1 or something. Or even similar to what they've done in the Vomero 17 this year. About 12.8 centimeters of forefoot width here at the widest point, and about 9.9 centimeters in the heel. So that's close to a centimeter wider at the widest point than the Triumph 21. So there are a few differences here. You'll pick those up as the review continues. Now the midsole does seem a touch firmer here than the Triumph 21, I have to say. It does feel like a slightly different formula in the Ride 17. And other viewers have noted that different colorways even of some of the Saucony shoes with Power Run Plus do feel a little bit different. I've got an average short A durometer reading here of the midsole of about 28, and that is pretty much spot on in terms of softness of the average running shoe across all the reviews on my channel. That's like after like 4 years. I believe the Triumph 21 was about 23 short A. That's from memory. Can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, but I can remember the short A durometer softness of the Triumph 21. So definitely a little bit firmer here than the Triumph 21. We'll kick off the review with the upper first. Now, I do like the setup here. It is a little bit different to some of the other Saucony shoes. Lace loops there rather than standard eyelets. It creates a slightly different lock around the sort of midfoot section, though it does make for a point of slightly lower durability, I suppose, if those lace loops were to break. Now, I don't think they're for everybody, really. There is a considerable reinforced overlay around this section of the shoe on both the lateral and medial sides. Creates kind of like a wrap around the foot. Does remind me of those inner wraps that Nike use on some of their shoes. I think it was like the Zoomfly 3 and 4 use something like that. I think if we're running on some road to trail routes, you might want to pick up a different colorway. I've been quite lucky with this one. I've got some Rejuvenator cleaner that I've used to try and get the upper looking a bit nicer again. I would suggest if you get this one dirty, it's just going to stay there, isn't it? In this sort of yellow gold or whatever it is. Let me have a look, actually. Apparently they're calling this one Canary Yellow. So, reminds me of an episode of Only Fools and Horses. Now, I wouldn't suggest the upper here is all that less plush than the Triumph 21. I just think it's more of a different take on it, really. Very similar application. Oddly, though, I did find after my initial runs that the fit on the Triumph 21 just suits me a little bit better. I think the 21 in that case is going to be more suited to longer distance running, certainly for training. This one feels a little bit more like a sort of slightly shorter distance sort of daily shoe, maybe in that easy sort of recovery type zone. I think the upper's breathable enough with all those ventilation holes here around the front. There's stacks of them. but I'm not going to count them for you. I found it fits true to size as pretty much all of the Saucony releases do this year, perhaps aside from the Rift. There's perhaps a little bit more room up front here in terms of width. I think the mesh perhaps has a touch more structure to it over the Triumph 21. Lace length is on point. I tried it with a runner's knot and a standard bow and I had no issues. It wasn't too long or too short, and the laces do have that little bit of stretch to them as we have in many of the Saucony releases this year. Not too much though. So in many ways, like a comparison here of the uppers, I suppose, between the Ride 17 and the Triumph 21, it's a bit like a Fender Jazzmaster and a Fender Jaguar. Both have similar design nods but slightly different implementation. Do I like one better than the upper? I think I do prefer the Triumph 21 on this occasion. A little bit softer for me there. It's a little bit more fitting around my foot. That one oddly feels a little less plush, and I kind of like the reduced weight of the Triumph 21 too. Though I'd suggest there's no major issues here at all with the upper. I just really prefer that one. And when the shoes are quite similar in terms of the implementation, every small little thing makes quite a difference. And I always fear durability of these lace loops as well. So comfortable on foot after my initial runs. I think I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 3 for the upper. If you're enjoying the review, people, please help me to reach 1 million subscribers by hitting that subscribe button, but also giving this video a thumbs up like. Make sure you share it with your running buddies too. Dankeschön. Midsole. Midsole. Midsole now. Midsole wise, I found the stack here is really nice for some sort of daily cruising. Feels a bit more locked in perhaps to that sort of lower pace for me. Find the Triumph's just a little bit more versatile with that slightly higher drop in the stack. Straight out the box for 10 miles at around about 8 minutes 15 seconds per mile, so that's a bit higher than about 5 minutes per kilometre. I found the Ride 17 really sort of enjoys that pace. Not a shoe that I'd ever consider doing some very fast sort of sessions in. Just isn't really that type of feel, and towards the very end of the run it did feel like I was lacking a bit of propulsion there. Certainly the legs were nice and rested, but I don't think that's the intention of the Ride 17. I think that's where the Triumph's coming into play there. It just feels a little bit more up for it. Perhaps think of the Ride 17 as that sort of daily car going around town versus the slightly upgraded Triumph 21 with its go faster modifications. Now, don't get me wrong, this shoe is still very cushioned. It's just that the Triumph has that extra level of cushion, which I think will benefit people if they're going to be doing some perhaps half marathon or marathon training, doing those longer runs. Just felt really at home on the country roads, nice and quiet out there. For the most part anyway. Nice smooth ride, as it should be really, considering the name of the shoe. That midsole compresses really nicely and has all the hallmarks of this stuff where it's been used in the past on other Saucony models. I've also found the Power Run Plus stuff to be really consistent and very durable as well. It doesn't tear up like some of that Zoom X stuff. Some of the other compressed pellet foams just tear really easy if you catch them on like a rock or a piece of metal or something. On a staircase, for example. I think part of the fact this shoe isn't quite as versatile as the Triumph is the increased midsole width here. There's quite a lot of surface area underfoot. Feels perhaps a little bit more like this is Saucony's attempt at something like the Infinity Run. I think if you want something that's a little bit more kind of traditional almost, aside from the stack, the Triumph 21's a better bet. I think perhaps the wider footed runners, or maybe those who are a little bit more heavier built, might actually benefit from that wider surface area. They've put the foam going outwards rather than upwards in the forefoot. As a slender built runner, I think the Triumph just feels a little bit better to me. But I can see how others will benefit from the adjusted geometry in the Ride 17. So for the midsole, after my initial runs, I'm going to give this one a 2.5 out of 3. Outsole wise is where we've got quite a few changes actually up against the Triumph. There's a little bit more rubber here in terms of depth and coverage. Lugs seem a little bit more plentiful here, a little bit more generous, which they should be around this time of year. Though we do have quite a lot of exposed midsole certainly here in the midfoot area. I did find that we have a slightly more assured grip here than the Triumph, certainly in some sort of wet conditions, though I'd suggest it's still no match for the superb outsole design of the Adizero Boston 12 from Adidas. I think that kind of fits into this category a little bit in terms of weight and certainly price as well. Grip here certainly good in terms of road and tarmac. It's not really an option. I wouldn't pull this one out for those sort of muddy trails or anything like that. Even if I was going to go road to trail, I think there's better options out there. The ride's really suited for concrete and tarmac. It's always horses for courses when it comes down to traction and grip on the outsole. I'd suggest for road, probably a match for the Triumph 21. I'll give it a 2.7 out of 3 for the outsole. I haven't seen any real wear on my pair of the Triumph 21 at all, so I think we've got the same outsole rubber type stuff here. We gotta talk value now. Now, lots of comparisons here for the Ride 17 against the Triumph. There is quite a price difference. This one's coming in at about £135 or Earth credits here in the UK versus the 170 of the Triumph 21. So it starts to make sense a little bit when you see that. A little bit more bulk here to the Ride 17, perhaps a little bit less range. We've got more width here in the forefoot and the heel, just a little bit less versatile. Now, is it £35 less of a shoe? I'd say no, not at all. It's probably going to actually benefit a few cross sections of runners, perhaps better than the Triumph 21. I think at 135 it's actually very competitively priced up against some things like the Boston 12, which is an absolute banger. I think it's going to be hard to compete against that shoe, though it does have a narrower fit, so the Ride 17 could actually benefit you there. I mean, it's way less clunky than the Infinity Run and things like that. That model's not really going anywhere. I found this one fine up to like 8 or 9 miles, so there's reasonable range there for most people on their daily outings. A lot of you might actually opt for a max cushioned shoe there if you're doing longer runs anyway. And if you're going to run a very long varied session with some speed sections in there, then you're probably going to pick a plated shoe anyway. This is a very stable impact protection type shoe and a much cheaper option than the sort of firm but fair Nimbus 25, and the Cloud Eclipse is a much more expensive sort of model. It's got like a more elaborate, slightly more exciting type design, but it's not going to be for everyone. Build quality on these out of the box is great, as always with Saucony shoes. I've never had an issue. So aside from that limited versatility, I'm going to give the Ride 17 a value score of 2.6 out of 3 after my initial runs. If I've totaled all the scores up correctly, that gives us a 10.3 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Saucony Ride 17. Are you a fan of the Ride series from Saucony? Are you thinking about picking this one up? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. A bar humbug musical interlude for you. Now, I managed to make it to December the 20th without hearing one of my least favourite Christmas songs, which is the one by Mariah Carey. I won't mention the name of it. There's lots of things I don't like about this song. I don't like the intro. I don't like the really weak sort of backing. The drums just sound like someone playing a load of cardboard boxes. There's lashings of icy, nasty reverb on everything. It literally sounds like someone shaking like a big sieve of icing sugar on top of you every single time. And I think even worse than the original version is the one that appears at the end of Love Actually. I really like that film, but the version they use there just sounds terrible as well. That's the one thing I don't like about that film. Well, actually, I don't like the bit with the cards as well, when he holds the cards up near the end. I don't like that bit either. And there's really bad miming, like earlier on when they're getting married as well. They're pretending to play the instruments. In fact, there's quite a lot of things I don't like about that film. It's not one of my favourites, I have to be honest. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, now you're talking. Now that is a good film. Can't see the line, can you, Russ? Anyway, try and avoid it if you can. It's probably too late already. You've probably heard this one by Mariah Carey, and there's no saving you after that one. Hope you're all having a great Christmas break, and if you're not having a Christmas break, I hope you're going to get one very soon. I do appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. It really helps out. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you